here to help us examine the anatomy of a breach with real-world case studies to share two Microsoft specialists, Director of Incident Response and Recovery, Matt Kemmelhar, and the Principal Cybersecurity Consultant, Jim Muller. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us here on the Summit.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much.
We're already talking doom and gloom and what to expect and how to prepare. There's so much to get into, but let's start with Matt. What does the typical intrusion look like?
Well, I'd first like to say it's great hearing from our other security experts there because
Sure.
we're all on the same page. You know,
Yeah.
we all come to the same type of conclusions or observations just from different perspectives. Jim and I respond to major breaches for customers around the world. And the typical intrusion is very interesting because it's the worst day in a security professional's life.
Right.
Not only the security professional, but the company and the IT staff as a whole. They're very stressed out because it's something that they probably didn't find out for themselves. Somebody else probably told them about this particular incident. Maybe it was another external organization who informed them of it, maybe law enforcement. Maybe it was something like they were having some performance issues in some systems, and they went to go find out about what was wrong with them, and lo and behold, they find out that they're compromised. So you've got all these IT staff who are working this case continuously on the customer's network. You've got the security people who are in their ear trying to get their handle around it, and at the same time, you've got the C-level folks, you know, hammering them and trying to get them to bring the network back online, to make sure that business is moving along normally and that everything's reconstituted. And it's a very, very stressful time in their life. What usually happens at this point, though, is they don't have the capabilities in-house to handle the situation. They have limited monitoring. They have limited ability to react or to try and do the investigation work. So they try their best, and then ultimately they have to try and look for external help, like a third-party vendor, for example, a response company to come out there and to help them get a handle on the situation. That's typically when somebody like our team would come in there to help them in that case. Once you get on site there, it's very, very hectic, as you can imagine. The organization has been working it night and day for probably maybe a couple weeks. And the truth is the adversary's probably been there for a while and they're reacting to something that might be old. So it's a tough situation. They're looking for you to be that knight in shining armor there to come and help them get back whole. So, you know, when you get there, it's really a sigh of relief, but at the same time, it's a lot more pressure for them to react and get back to a healthy situation.
Right. Well, let's talk, Jim, maybe you can talk to us about what the life cycle of an attack looks like.
Yeah, attacks are actually very interesting these days, and probably when you look at many industry experts that actually publish on what these attacks look like, pretty much everybody's in agreement. Pretty much 90% of the attacks that you see kind of follow the timeline and the mechanisms that we're about to lay out for you. And it all really starts with what your last guest was talking about. He actually was talking about what we would consider the foothold. You get the spam attacks, you get the emails, you get all kinds of things, and you get a general end user will click on something they shouldn't. There'll be outdated software on their systems that can be taken advantage of. The users are running with too many permissions on their own systems that allow the attacker to gain a foothold into the initial box, just some generic end user box. Generally, then what happens is you go from that initial foothold to what we call lateral traversal. Big words to basically mean I have one user, I want to turn that one user control into many users control to create an attack platform or attack net, if you will. At that point, you know, I only have access to what these users have access to. They probably don't have what I actually want. I need to go further into the environment, and for that, I need credentials, I need permission, I need authority. Therefore, I am waiting for somebody to expose their authority to me that I can then capture that, and then we go to elevation. So it's that foothold, lateral traversal, elevation, and then I have the ability to go and move about the environment and get what I want, and then I want to stay. I want to remain persistent and quiet so I can keep coming back over and over again. That's the typical life cycle that we actually see. Is it comes in from the normal end users, I spread that influence at that level until I capture the credentials necessary to do what I want to do. I then elevate so I can get what I want, and then I want to stay. I want to keep visiting you.
Yeah, well, and these terms are, unfamiliar to some of the audience as well. So yeah, let's talk about those first stages, gaining a foothold, as you talked about, the local escalation, how that all works.
Yeah, so I'll take this one, Jim. So let's talk about the initial foothold. So our last speaker talked a lot about the spam that's now very believable, getting into social engineering, and those are typical ways to get into networks. So it is a true misnomer that people think there's some very spooky way that they get in and they use this really super secret, really complicated technique. But most of the time it is some sort of social engineering to gain that initial foothold. The emails are believable. I've read them. I believe half of them, and I've even called out some that look real or look fake but turn out to be real as well. But definitely email is a primary vector where they get in. Sure, they can still attack web-facing systems occasionally, but for the most part, they try and get in through some sort of social media. Not only just email attachments, but think about links to websites as well.
Right.
There's a technique called a watering hole, which is an adversary will do some reconnaissance work against an organization and find out the websites that they go to on a fairly regular basis, and they'll try and compromise that, whether it's a blog site or something interesting to the local populace, for example. And then they'll lure folks to that website and compromise them that way.
Wow.
So again, it's still a social engineering type of attack.
Absolutely.
And then once they have that initial foothold, it's some sort of user's account, right? It has the privileges of that particular user, so it might not be able to get to all the resources that they need to in the network. So what they'll want to do is they'll want to do a local escalation. They'll want to try and become more powerful than they currently are. And they do that in a variety of ways. A lot of times it's still just system hygiene issues where there's configuration problems or the user was already